Welcome to Learning Skills in the 21st Century, seminar number 1. I am Carla Fisher and I will be presenting you this seminar today. Our email address is success@fullsail.com and you can send your seminar summaries to us there. All right, well, let's go ahead and begin. As you can see, we started out with a mouse, which is a good indicator that you'll be probably doing a lot of this obviously on your computer, but there'll be some helpful hints to do even if you do it handwritten as well. So for those of you who sometimes need help in how you might do things handwritten, there'll be tips on that as well. The first thing I want to talk about is, in order to study, in order to learn, what is it that you need to be able to do and access the ability to think? So here's a question that I pose to you, and that is our brain built to remember or to forget? Which one do you think that might be the case? Okay, since you've answered, I will go ahead and tell you that for those of you who said we were meant to forget, that is the correct answer. Strangely and oddly enough, we might think that it's to remember, but actually our brains are built to forget. So therefore, it makes it vital to really have an understanding of how we can keep things in our brain and not forget something. Okay, so I'll be talking about different ways that you'll be able to approach that. Okay, so as you can see, your brain, obviously the central focal point of this seminar, is what happens with your thinking. Okay, so let's see what we know about how we learn. All right, you ready? So understanding your memory. You're going to need to have obviously some sensory input, meaning you'll see something on the screen, you'll be hearing the voice of your instructor, you might actually be working with a piece of equipment, but all these things are sensory input, okay? It goes into the area of short-term memory, all right? And from there, in order to strengthen the ability to have this be something that you will remember further on, it has to be a part of something called a rehearsal path. And so what happens with the rehearsal path is you learn something, and then you have to somehow rehearse it. So again, let's say you have a piece of equipment. You have to rehearse and rehearse and rehearse how to use it. Some of you play musical instruments. There was plenty of rehearsal that went on with that. Both of my children play instruments. What do they have to do in order to have that be something that is not just right now and they get it, but for future reference, they have to rehearse and rehearse and rehearse. Not always too happy when mom reminds them, but it is an important piece of that. Therefore, then it can become long-term memory. And when you have that long-term memory, the great thing is you'll create some sort of retrieval path to your brain, and you'll be able to go ahead and come up with whatever it is you were learning, maybe in 2 years, maybe in 5, maybe even in 6 months. So again, using that comparison with instruments. My son hasn't played a guitar in a long time, but because he plays flute and because he's continued to practice some way and understand about music, he can pick up a guitar and go ahead and figure out where the notes are, figure out what it sounds right, because of the rehearsing that he did, first of all, when he learned guitar, but then continuing on with his music with his flute. Okay, so as you can see here, it starts with your sensory. It goes to your short-term memory. In order to get there, you have to do a rehearsal path. And then the retrieval path is triggered and goes to your brain. Pretty simple, it seems, but it's putting it into use that really is the place that we find it to be most effective, obviously. When you do this, what happens is this. You create an ability, when you have it be the rehearsal path, to make it active, okay? And then you create triggers to be able to have it be retrieved, all right? So something that you've done, something that you might have said or heard, will then create a trigger for you to remember. And I'll be showing you something in a little bit that you will say, oh, that's right, I see how that connects. Okay? So first, I want you to see that in order to make learning happen, you have to make it active. We just said that before, right? Then you have to create triggers. With those things together, first step, second step, you create a learning pathway. You create the ability to learn. Really important. And you can find different really creative ways, and especially being Full Sail students, I know that you have creative ways that you've already started using to help you have a real important and solid way of getting the information that your instructors are giving you. The things that we'll be covering during the seminar: effective reading, because I have a feeling you do quite a bit of that. Improve your learning by going ahead and do active studying. Improve your memory. Improve note taking. Now I know you're online, but still, some of you still might approach the whole thing with online in the old-fashioned way of maybe writing notes, whether it be on a keyboard or handwritten. But sometimes that alone, rewriting something, will then be reflective and have you remember something that you've been studying. Okay? All right, so let's go with this. Do you believe in use it or lose it? Look at some of the things that I will show you here. Lyrics to a song. I bet all of you right now can remember a song that you really loved that you can start humming right now, or even singing some of the words. I always do, but I always get to maybe the second line in the song and then forget it, and then I have to hum the rest. A favorite movie. You can be remembering a line from a favorite movie. For instance, I was just watching Grease with my kids earlier today, and I remembered certain lines because I enjoyed the movie and I watched it over and over when I was younger. A favorite book. You know, right now, boom, you thought of a favorite book, you thought of what happened in it, you thought about the characters, you could feel the emotion involved in that. Riding a bike, you know, that's one of those cliche things, but it's like, you know, oh, it's like riding a bike. Once you get back on, you'll remember how to do it. But it really is, because what happens, especially, that's a great example of, you know, going ahead and making it active and then creating a trigger. You have to make it active. You have to move a bike. But then you might, when you're doing the act of bicycling, if you haven't done it in a long time, the act of going ahead and moving the wheels by pedaling. And that'll be triggered and you'll be able to do it. So there's all different ways, okay? I want you to pay attention to this very special song.
Conjunction, junction, what's your function?
Hooking up words and phrases and clauses.
Conjunction, junction, how's that function?
I got 3 favorite cars that get most of my job done.
Conjunction, junction, what's their function?
I got and, but, and, or. They'll get you pretty far.
All right, so I just wanted to show you a really quick clip of that. And I'm sure all of you go back to, oh my God, that's Schoolhouse Rock. I remember that. Oh yeah, Conjunction Junction. You're able to go through it. And like, you might even start thinking about the other really cool songs that Schoolhouse Rock did. And even my kids now can sing some of those songs and remember some of the important things. When my son was doing civics, one of the things that helped him when he was trying to learn about the bill, the song The Bill. And right now, I'm sure, boom, you all are laughing or thinking to yourself, oh, that's right, there was that song. You can even look online and I'm sure you will find it. But those are ways that were really helpful to remember some important things. So when you might have been stuck, boom, this came up. I'm sure you all came up with some really clever ways to remember your multiplication tables. Okay, that's because you made it active and then you created a trigger. You made it so that somehow, if you heard it, or if you heard a tune, you would go ahead and do that. Think about it. How do we learn the alphabet? Through a song. If you start hearing the beginnings of the tune for the alphabet, you start humming along or even saying the ABCs. These are all ways to make something active and become a part of your learning skills. Okay? let's see. Let's go ahead and go on. So, we've talked about making it active and creating a triggers. Obviously, that comes from the human brain and the ability to have a memory. All right? We're going to cover different ways that you can do that. The biggest way that I want to talk about is mnemonic devices. And I'm sure all of you have heard of that term. Maybe you've even remember when you were in school having somebody talk to you about that. I'm going to tell you some different mnemonic devices that will be helpful to you in order to remember things. Okay? So the first one that I want to talk about is called acronyms. All right? Now, I'm sure that right now you can think of a number of acronyms that you might have heard or used in your lifetime. Okay? Something really silly, but that has affected everybody in the world. After World War II, I believe, there was something called NATO, National Alliance of Treaties Organization. And forgive me if I missed some of it. Obviously, there wasn't enough triggering there. But there's all types of acronyms. Acronyms are taking the first letter of a word and then using the rest of what might be involved in creating a word to describe that action or that thing that you want to remember. Okay, so there's all different ways to do that. And you don't have to create you don't have to have an acronym be because of somebody else. You can create your own acronyms. Okay, acronyms are really helpful and effective. Acrostics. Anybody know what those are? Well, good if you do, and hopefully you've used it. But if not, let me remind you, acrostics are great ways of going ahead and remembering something by just creating some type of sentence to remind you of something. So for instance, north, south, east, and west. You all probably have different acrostics that you use that your teacher taught you, okay, of how to go about remembering north, south, east, and west. Again, going back to sometimes, things with music and where the keys are on something. The way to learn it is sometimes to create an acrostic. You create an ability to remember the first letter as a word and then going with that throughout the time period that you're learning something. So an acrostics is really helpful. I remember as a kid, my twin sister would use acrostics frequently when she was studying. I just went ahead and did it rote memory. But now that I think about it, she probably can still remember some of the stuff far better than I can because she created it and made it something. And I'm sure if we were to have to go back and see the same information now, my sister would come up with a sentence immediately. Of course, I teased her about it, but it actually was a really smart idea. But don't tell her I said so. Music, rhythms, rhymes, stories. I got music. I'm not going to sing, sorry. But you can make up a song. You can create a rhythm, that will help you remember something. A rhyme, if you're really inclined to be able to do poetry or something like that. Or a story. Some of you are in creative writing. The ability to tell a story is something much easier maybe for you. But to be able to come up with a way to understand it. You could use acrostics in it. You can use acronyms in that story. But again, enabling it to become an active piece in your learning. Associations. So if X is equal to Y, then A is equal to B. Somehow creating some type of association. When the moon is full moon, therefore there's higher possibilities of higher waves and tides coming in. Associating those two things, bringing it together. Pictures, visualization. You might be able to pull up a picture and remember something that you had studied long ago. Your teacher used to put it on the board and you'd have to say, oh yeah, that is the, chemistry of such and such molecule. Obviously, I didn't do well in chemistry, so I can't recall any of that. But again, having that occur, having it be a picture, and you can recreate again your own picture. It might be that while you are dealing with graphic design, creating a picture, looking at it, remembering it, Maybe that's part of your note taking as well, is having that be there. And you can then go ahead and rehearse it and rehearse it. Chunking. Anybody familiar with that? Okay, usually it's best when created with numbers, okay? But I'm sure that you've done it without even realizing it. Now we have the ability to just go ahead and input numbers into our electronic devices, therefore never having to memorize a number. But let's say you needed to remember a number, okay? For those of you who remember when we did have to memorize, you would go ahead and chunk it. So for instance, you were going to call Full Sail. You needed to remember the phone number to Full Sail. So you might go ahead and chunk the numbers and go, let's see, Full Sail's phone number is 407 551 2024. You know, and like somehow have it be that it gets triggered that way. You chunk up the numbers. You might even do it differently. But however you do it, to make it so that it is something that you can remember and you create it for yourself to make it active. Again, this isn't so that it'll work for somebody else, but however it might work for you. And those are important ways to help yourself make it active and then create a trigger. These different forms of mnemonic devices. Okay? So how can we make studying active? Okay? One of the ways that I want to point out, and it's up there, is the flashcard machine. Simple, easy, and I believe free, which is always a nice price. Okay? So you might want to check that out. For those of you who've already checked it out, I'm sure you're agreeing right now. To make studying active, here are some different techniques. One thing, it says study groups. Now, some of you might be going, how can we do that, Carla? We're online. One of the things I keep hearing over and over from the different types of instructors you have that are online instructors, they try to make an environment where you can connect with other students. And I've even spoken to those students who are online, and they've been very happy to know that they can create a group online and be able to study together, even if it is hours difference in different time zones, but they've had the ability to connect and make it so that maybe another student got information that you didn't get. And when having a study group, you can connect all of that, okay? Put info into a beat. I talked about it with music. Make a podcast. I'll be talking further about that in a minute. Write a song. Do a flow chart. Sometimes that's helpful. Make a formal outline. You have information, go ahead and do it that way. Make a board game. So you're learning something that's sort of dry. Make it fun. Have it be a board game. Have somebody who has no understanding of your material maybe play with you. Have a good time explaining to them what you're learning, what some of the things are in the board game. You might find that you'll get the information better that way. Type it out. Type out the information. So you've already typed it out. Type it in a different way. Show it to somebody. Maybe have them do grammatical corrections, but in so doing, you've already started the process of keeping it alive. If you are working with gear, for instance, in digital cinematography, once you have your hands on the gear, and you know when that occurs, that you're super excited to finally get to that point of being able to. But when you do, start practicing with the equipment. Look at what you've been studying. Put it into usage with the gear that you have been given. You know, replace your text with pictures. We talked about that earlier. Make a concept map like this. This is a form of a concept map. Do that. You can see things. You can watch where it goes. Really, sometimes very important. Do something like a drawing or a doodle. Those can be great ways of being able to learn something. Whenever I am trying to understand a concept that is foreign to me, if I'm having a hard time, I will go ahead and take out a sheet of paper and sort of draw it out. Now, I'm not the best artist at all. That is my daughter's forte. However, I can at least get a concept that way by looking at something. I have to see it. The importance with hearing that is remembering that all of these different ways of being able to make it active also depend upon you and what is most effective and what is your learning style. Because my learning style might not be the best for you. Like I said, drawing something out might be really helpful. Some of you, having flashcards might be the better thing, or maybe having a study group, or putting it into music. But you have to figure out what is the best approach for you, because you're studying not for anybody else, but for yourself. So you can get the information so it can stay with you for long term, not just for the short term. Okay? Now, I told you that we'd be talking a little bit further on podcasts, and I think you'll see here as you can read, but I really want to let you know that when you do this, what's happening is you're taking the information that you've been given, and then you can put it into your own words. Now, if you don't want your own voice, then you can go ahead and type up a script. Then, taking that script, you can give it to somebody who you might find that their voice really is one that you enjoy hearing, that you'll really get the information better with. They speak clearly and articulately, and then you can go ahead and have them just read the script. You might want to have background music or sound effects in that. You might want to have some pictures come up while you're doing that, for those of you who are really creative and doing something like that. The good thing about it too is you can download it and you can take it anywhere you want while you're running. Hopefully you're not trying to run and look at pictures, but at least you can be hearing it while you're sleeping, while you're maybe on a plane, while you're at work doing something sort of as a background. If you keep it that way, again, it's going to be something that you hear over and over again. Okay? There's lots of tutorials through Apple in which you can go ahead and figure out how to do this. Okay? The other piece too is for those of you who are PC users, there's Audacity, which here you have the website, www.audacity.com. Okay? Another way you can also learn how to go ahead and make a podcast if you're not using an Apple product. Some stuff I want to tell you that is sort of, let's say, doesn't seem like it's important, but it is. And I'm going to say this, because you're always in front of a computer studying, you might want to get your eyes checked. Now, why would you want to do that? For the mere fact that in order to sometimes learn some of the material, you might want to do that. Now, for those of you who have visual impairments, difficulties, then maybe there's other things that you will use as opposed to your vision. That might be your sense of being able to hear and listen. So making sure that you can hear something, that you have it in a way that you can hear the material that's being presented. If you can, silently reading is faster and more effective than if you're doing it orally. I don't understand the research behind that, but when I was going ahead and researching, that's one of the things that was stated. Pick out keywords and concepts. We'll be talking further about that. Have a purpose for your reading. Before you start reading going, I have to read this for class, say, what is the teacher seeking for me to understand with this material? And then going ahead and looking for that purpose. Because if you don't have a purpose, you might get lost in the way of the reading. Okay? Here we go again with understanding memory. Obviously, once again, it's a sensory input. It's then daisy. Let me go back to that one. Sorry. Sensory input, the short-term memory, the long-term memory, and it goes to your brain. Okay? Why am I repeating it? Because again, I want it to be that you will go, that's right. She said it before, and it's really important. Making it an active learning process so it can become long-term, so it can therefore be something that anytime later in the future, if you get triggered, you will remember. Okay? All right, so how to take some class notes. All right? Now again, you have a computer, you'll have some PowerPoints and all that, but sometimes you're going to want to have it be in your own words. And as I said before, sometimes putting it into your own words will make it more active and help you understand the material better. Okay, so here are some pointers when it comes to that. Obviously, you can do some note taking on your computer. There's a way to highlight. I'm sure you're very familiar with that already. And for those of you who aren't, go ahead and start researching that. They do have some great ways to be able to learn how to highlight the things that you're reading on your ebooks by just listening to a tutorial on that. One of the things with note taking is be aware that when you're note taking, to just highlight important words or phrases. I remember when I was doing my master's, I started highlighting the whole page. And so when I go back to study for an exam, I'd be lost because I would have highlighted everything and I didn't really know what was most important. I learned very quickly after that first semester that what I needed to do was highlight only things that were key points, key concepts, or key phrases. And that's where I got to be able to really remember things, okay, when note taking. The other piece with note taking is it can help you have a continuous review. When you note take and it's in your own words, you can review it over and over. You can review it later on. One of the things too is note take, and if you need to, do it quickly, whether it be handwritten or going ahead and using your keyboard. But I will tell you, if you're anywhere near like me, you might want to rewrite it and rewrite it soon after you've done it the first time so that you can understand what intonations you've written. Okay? Leave out filler words, the, and, with. Figure out different ways to do that. Again, using concept maps. Okay? Lots of things online that talks and shows you how to do that. All right. The concept maps, you can even do bubbles and have it pointing, have the focal point, and then have it pointing to something new and different that'll be something that you go, oh, that's right. And then you might have another concept map with that one specific piece that you want to understand further about that. Okay. Concept maps are really good in note taking. Paraphrasing, again, saying it in your own words, making it so that, oh, that sounds familiar. I remember that. Okay, and I did a lot of that when I was taking time to learn my master's in counseling. Learned how to go ahead and paraphrase something. So it wasn't necessarily what I was hearing in the book, but it became real to me because I made it real. So one of the first concepts that I learned when I was taking the first class in my master's was counseling is about attending to somebody. It is about listening to them. It's not about judging them or giving an opinion. Now, of course, it was much more elaborate in my textbook, but due to the fact that we talked about it in a study group, due to the fact that I went ahead and made it my own, years later, and I won't say how many, but many years later, I was still able to retain that information. Okay. Another way is, again, looking at it as leave out filler words, which we talked about, paraphrasing, concept maps, reviewing or writing. Now, again, you might say, but I don't need this. I'm letting you know that even if it's not necessarily right now in your class, while you're at an important meeting, while you're doing something, to have that be a habit that you create for yourself. Okay. Other ways that I want you to understand about note-taking tips is you can see it in this pie shape, okay? If you go ahead and you take notes and you review them and you look at them within the 24 hours afterwards, 84% of the time you will still have it be active and alive for you to understand. If you do it a day later, 54% of that. 3 days later, 42%. 5 days later, lots of time in between of life happening, you're not going to really even get halfway of an understanding or making it a process of learning if you wait that long. So try to make it so it is something that you do regularly. Okay? Another thing that I want you to pay attention to, schedule the best time for you to read and to be able to concentrate. The great piece about being online is you can do this, okay? Go ahead and create your own table of content. So the teacher's written out a table of content. Make it so that you create your own table of content of things you want to understand and learn. Bring that to your instructor. Have it be that maybe your instructor hasn't thought about that. And therefore, you're offering the ability for them to go ahead and give you more of an understanding of something because you've created your own content of what it is that you're understanding. Okay? Read before you go to class. I know, but I don't have time. Then scan it really quick if you can't read every piece of it. You know, you don't have to read the and, or ofs, but just getting the key stuff. Read before you go to class, so at least when the teacher's talking about it, it is not something completely new. You've already had it somewhere going on in your brain. Okay? Some really cool techie tools that you can use. Okay? Zoho Notebook, Spring Notebook, Notefish, Evernote. There's many different places to go. Some of these, again, are free. These are things that you can find, obviously, online. So your studying is online anyways. Go ahead and look for ways to use these. Really effective, really helpful. Okay? You know what's another easy way? When you've done this and you're writing something out, create your own test. Test yourself. Ask somebody else to test you. Going ahead and having it be that you're doing that, so you're not necessarily causing yourself to feel uncomfortable, but you're causing yourself to remember the information, will help you remember the information. Okay? Some other resources, okay, so that you know you're not alone, because especially when it's an online environment, sometimes it can feel pretty lonely. So, tutors. Though we do not have tutors available for online students in your core classes, you might want to go ahead and talk to your instructor. Ask them how you can maybe get some more support that way through them, or maybe somebody that's in the field already that could tutor you or mentor you. I know that in some of your online programs, that's already accessible and available. Your classmates, again, make it so that you start having connections. I know that some of you might be enjoying the fact that online you don't need to necessarily be face to face with people, but if you do want it, there are ways to go ahead and connect with your classmates, even if it's just via email. But that way you can get information. My husband right now is in school, and one of the things that he has found helpful in his online classes is having that online communication with his classmates. So let's say that they are not sure if there's going to be a class, they'll be communicating. One might hear from the instructor, the other might go ahead and hear something different, and then they'll communicate to be able to make it clear for everyone. Communicate with your course directors. They want to hear from you. They're here to teach you. I have met a number of online directors and instructors, and I will tell you, they really want to be there for their students. They find that they have a passion for the information that they have learned and that they have used in their life. They want to give that to their students as well. If you have a lab, I know that that's not necessarily a part of online world, but if you do, talk to them. Any type of information that you can get to help you be more successful that way is good. And not to plug my department so much, but I'm going to. We are another resource for that as well. We're called Student Success Services. Why? Because if you feel like you're not doing as well as you'd like to academically, you can always reach out to us and we can maybe provide you with different tips and strategies to help you. For instance, these seminars. One way to do it, but we can also take the time, whether it be through email or whether it be a phone call, to go ahead and talk to you and help you through an understanding of how it might suit you best to be successful as a student at Full Sail University. Again, digital flashcards, flashcard machine, test prep. There's a great website called studygs.net that's really good at helping you get prepared for taking tests. Some ways that you can have application tutorials is apple.com or even lynda.com. And I think some of you have already had the experience with lynda.com through Connect. Keep using it. It really can be very helpful in that way. Lastly, I want to say thank you so much for being willing and able to attend this seminar. This is seminar number 1. My name is Carla Fisher. Our email address is there. And I hope that this has been helpful for you. Thank you and have a great rest of your day. Bye.